It is a period of relative peace and prosperity in the galaxy. We're some 100 years from the fall of the Old Republic and the rise of the Empire. Welcome to Fantha Reaction Chat for episode 7 and episode 8 of the Acolyte. So episode 7 was entitled Choice, and it kind of mirrors episode 3's Destiny. And episode 8, well, it's the name of the show, the Acolyte. So, where were we? Where did we leave off? And apologies for a double episode, but that's what happens when you decide to go away for a week in the middle of a Star Wars streaming series. Anyhow, so episode 7, we get most of our answers, or do we? We jump back 16 years to Brendok and kind of get the other side of a story that we first saw early on in the season. And then episode 8, wow, it's the season finale, and hopefully it's going to lead on to more Acolyte. So, without further ado, partly because I haven't written an introduction, Miss Mark Newbold, are you there, sir? Are you there?
I am here. I am here. I can hear you loud and clear.
Loud and here. Excellent. So, let's talk about it, and let's just put our hands completely on hold our hands up and say we're going to jump all around these two episodes because hey, that's what Reaction Chats does.
Exactly.
So, double whammy, two episodes. What did you make of it? Episode 7 and episode 8?
Episode 7 I really enjoyed. It was a flip side, obviously, of Destiny, episode 3, and there was quite a lot of episode 3 in this episode. I think in Star Trek parlance that would be called the bottle show. But less of that. I enjoyed it. It was good to see things from a different point of view, which is all what Star Wars is all about, of course. And to see a Wookiee going nuts with a lightsaber, that was fantastic. There's some great fight sequences in that, so I really enjoyed it. It did give you a different spin. You realised that Mother Coral was quite involved in getting May all up and revving to do what she did with the fire. Episode 8, The Acolyte, was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Again, to pick on the action fight scenes, Christopher Clark Cameron did an amazing job. The lightsaber scenes in that were off the hook. They used slow motion judiciously. They slowed it down when you needed to
Yep.
see some really cool stuff. I mean, Soul couldn't have been shown off to better effect. And was it a twist? Has this been coming? The turn between the sisters was very. I enjoyed it. I mean, it might have been telegraphed. In fact,
Yeah.
it probably was telegraphed, but just the way it played out, the way they leaned into Soul's lie and Vinestra's cover up, which we'll get into, I'm sure, as we keep talking, was really well played, I thought. And yes, there needs to be more Acolyte. What do you think about it?
Well, I think the one thing that I've kind of become more aware of as the season has unfolded is that the show in itself has kind of, I don't know, it hasn't really found, I guess, its key demographic. Like if
Hmm.
you were to ask me who is it for, I'm just like, I'm not quite sure. Obviously Star Wars fans, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is that audience? And it's kind of sat in this middle ground. And a lot of people kind of actually, somebody kind of wrote a review who basically said if you swapped all the Jedi for the word vampire, you've basically got like a YA kind of um, you know, kind of
Yeah.
like series. And that's
Yeah.
probably not far off. But I've kind of felt like there's some really brilliant touches all the way through. But yeah, I feel like where it's lacking is the dialogue. I feel like the dialogue needed a little bit more polish. And sometimes when you've got good acting but bad dialogue, you can kind of get away with it. And conversely, when you've got bad acting with good dialogue, it kind of works. But sometimes I think it's been a little bit ropey, and so I've kind of felt like, as much as it's really good, it's just not quite there for top tier Star Wars. However, I did enjoy it. I kind of thought, yeah, episode 7, but like the penultimate part of like the series and the second flashback episode was, yeah, I liked how they tried to create suspense by kind of pushing it to the back end of the series.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know, everything feels a little bit vague, which maybe is not necessarily a bad thing because it means you're open to interpretation, but also I think it it then doesn't feel like it's delivered. It hasn't quite landed maybe some of the reveals. And so some of the things, like you said, like May and Osha kind of turning and swapping kind of places, didn't feel like a big dramatic kind of beat in the end. And maybe that's the point. maybe this is partly it's down to destiny at the end of the day, and it's down to like where you end up where you're going to end up. So it's kind of a mixed kind of bag, really. I thought these two episodes. I mean, obviously the fighting from all the saber combat I felt has been brilliant since the
Yeah.
first episode, and
Yeah.
so you can't fault it on that. Obviously, it's Star Wars, and I don't think you can really fault the visuals and the world building, really. And I thought the whole kind of chase through the kind of like the asteroid belt as in going into the rings like that, that was quite cool because that just visually looked really kind of slightly different from what we've ever seen.
Yeah.
So it's still nice to be able to see something slightly different from, say, the films. But thematically, I feel it's like been a mixed bag, and I think that has also then meant that emotionally it hasn't quite landed for me personally. However, it has left things open for a second season, which I'm pretty sure back in the promos for the whole season, they were saying like, this is a like a closed story, and by the end of it, everything's been resolved, and if there isn't a second season, it wouldn't necessarily matter. But that's clearly not the case.
Yeah. No, the one thing it really sits as a parallel for me is with Rise of Skywalker. And I know Rise of Skywalker was supposed to wrap everything up, not just the sequel trilogy, not just the storylines in that trilogy, but the whole nine.
Yeah,
And it didn't, because there was a lot of questions left hanging at the end of nine in relation to the Emperor and to Exegol and stuff. So in the intervening 5 years, you've had all these comics, you've had Shadow of the Sith, and there's more stuff coming that's tying into it, which is fine. It's
yeah,
Star Wars, it's big storytelling, so that's fine. But it wasn't a conclusion. And that might have been by design. Lucasfilm aren't stupid. They always leave these little back doors for books and comics and such. I think the
yeah.
Acolyte, like you say, I want a season two. I really do. We had a roundtable last week that's on Making Tracks with Leslie Headland, and I asked the question: Is this your Phantom Menace? Is this your episode one? You've got a big stretch of time. Are you gonna, or are you planning, or have you got ideas of how to fill it? And she was very positive, like, yeah, we've got loads of ideas. So it's clearly in her mind she wants to do it. Also, in that same roundtable, she's saying it all depends on the numbers. Nobody said yes or no to me yet. I can't say I'd love to. Obviously, I'd love to.
Yeah,
And I think in the real world, she'll probably want to go and do something else, a season of something else, and then come back to it. So
yeah,
because I think personally, whatever we get next won't be. And the next day, Vanessa did this. I think it's going to be 10 years on, 15 years on. I think you're going to move a chunk of time down the timeline. That's the sweet spot for Lucasfilm. Then all of a sudden, they've got this lovely trench of time that they can fill with books and comics. So it's by design as much as by anything else. But yeah, I'd definitely like to see some more.
yeah. There's no reason why they can do that, and I think having a big, maybe like you said, a jump,
Mm.
it kind of then it creates more. You can have those kind of bigger developments. And I think you can then also have those bigger developments without necessarily having to have so much exposition as to how you get there,
Yeah,
because it's just
yeah,
like hopefully it'll be in the world building and the design and stuff that you'll
yeah,
see that we're getting closer to, say, the prequel trilogy.
yeah.
Um,
There's no
but
need for exposition in Star Wars, is there? Because there's a book or a comic or an animated series or something that can
kinda,
tell it.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, and this is a thing, like one of the things that I've been kind of thinking a lot about recently is just we had I'd say pretty much 40 years almost of no flashbacks in Star Wars, and then suddenly,
True.
like we've had one, and there's literally been at least one flashback, if not two, in just for every single Disney Plus like series.
Good point.
And I think from a storytelling perspective, I completely understand why it's probably quite appealing to lean to that. But I almost feel like now it's a narrative kind of like crutch that I
Device.
think people
Yeah.
are, yeah, maybe kind of relying too heavily on, when actually maybe some of it could have been done as a as a conversation. I think in this instance anyway, because again, Leslie Headland's talked about she's kind of been trying to show the same story from different perspectives,
Mm.
a bit like you did in Last Jedi,
Yeah.
channeling the whole kind of Rashomon influence. You kind of need to visually see it,
Yeah.
and I have liked how in the third episode, when we did initially jump back, we didn't see the full story. Um, and it is I think pretty much, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think by like last time we spoke about Acolyte, we had both come to the conclusion that there probably wasn't one big incident that happened. It was really a series of kind of like
Yeah.
small mistakes that have kind of led to like the death of the witches and everything else that transpired.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it did seem like smaller steps, but I think when you get to Choice, episode 7, and you see the moment of, and the thing is, as it plays out in the Acolyte in episode 8, the decision that Soul makes that he stands by, he knows it's an error. He grieves for his error. Literally, he's emotional about it. He knows he's screwed up. But in the moment when you see it, as she turns, as Anastasia turns into the misty black cloud of whatever, what else is he going to think? She
Mm,
doesn't say, now I'm going to transfer my power to my daughter. So just watch what, she just does it. So
yeah,
why wouldn't he assume that it's an attack? From their point of view, it's classic Star Wars, is where Leslie Headland's Star Wars head comes, it's a certain point of view. Excuse me. You know, they see that as an attack by the Jedi, them being there. I wouldn't have started a fire if you guys weren't here. It's the presence of you four being here that instigated the fire. Yeah, but you started the fire, so you can see both yin and yang of it. But Soul, stepping ahead, you can see, as you say, all these little things just mix up in a boiling pot to take us to that, the key, really, the key sequence of the Acolyte, of the eighth episode, where
yeah.
you've got Kimir, or the Stranger, whatever we're going to call him now, Darth, whatever, and May and Osha and Sol all together in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, Soul for me has definitely been the one character that like I think has come across really strongly.
Yeah,
And actually also the Padawans, like all the little Padawans, because I think actually what's quite nice is that the Padawans have more personality than these kind of like well-rounded Jedi Masters, Matt, who are kind of
yes,
been in the order for a lot longer, know the game, know what's expected from them, know kind of like the corporate line, shall we
yeah,
say.
very
Whereas
much.
these ones are like, I'm bored. I want to
Yeah,
go back to Coruscant. I don't want to be like sat here kind of like
I
eating
love that.
Wookiees stew. Yeah,
That
and so
that 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 moment of Turbin was just awesome
mm,
for me, because it was a kid. He's like, we were here 7 weeks digging
yeah,
holes in the ground. Can we go home now?
yeah. Is that I've just come back from Spain with two like teenagers. So you can imagine when, what happened when we decided that, one day we weren't going to go sit by a swimming pool, we were going to actually go, have a look around the
Yeah,
market and stuff. It
yeah,
was like dragging, two bored, fed up Padawans who just want to kind of go and do something completely different, have the
yeah,
adventure about and not just maybe
yeah.
chart this planet. I mean, and that was the thing, there was these, and I think everybody, I think, really needs to go back in, before,
Yeah.
hopefully there's season 2, before season 2, rewatch it, because there's
Yeah.
so many little nuggets of stuff that you start to kind of go, that makes sense. That now we'll start to understand, like, for example, why Cal Naka's kind of, he's on that planet, and why he's, he's still drawing all those kind of like tribal patterns and stuff,
Yeah.
because like Mother Anastasia got in his head, properly got in his head.
Yeah.
And clearly it's not just like, when she leaves it untouched. Like, he's changed, and like he's
Oh yeah.
affected. He's clearly having to go through a process to try and kind of get to terms with that.
Which
And
is a
that
very
in
Hard
itself,
Republic thing, though, isn't it? That's
yeah,
how the Drengir were. That's what happened to
mm,
Venestra's master, wasn't it? Scare.
yeah,
They got in his head, and he never really recovered from it.
exactly. And so then you kind of go, well, that, again, some of with Tobin, like he takes a bearish fell because of what's happened, and
Yeah.
you think, wow, it's there's some thoughtful, I suppose you say, some thoughtful writing in respects of like character, like, arcs and stuff in this.
Yeah. And there's parallels as well. You look at it really struck me when Venestra and the, forgive me, I didn't click on his name, David Harewood's character, had that meeting.
Yeah,
The senator guy had that meeting in the room, and it was quite cold and quite sterile. And you mentioned a point about how they're very cool and calm, and he's like, you treat this Jedi thing like a religion. You're the guys that hold all the power, and he gives it to her like with both, as calmly as a statesman would with both. But I like David Harewood. I think he's a great actor. So he gives her that whole sequence, and she's keeping it like okay,
Mm.
And so that whole scene, I was watching it with Ruth, and Ruth was like, "Is he right? Is he right in what he's saying?" I'm like, kind of looking back through history, you could say that he is. A lot of the things that he says are very raw nerve things to the Jedi because and as it goes, the parallel for me was Sol's decision in the moment to do what he did, and he couldn't save May, but he could save Osha, and he had to lie because she was too old to train. We saw that in Phantom Menace with Anakin. So it's only the death of Qui-Gon that got Anakin trained.
Yeah,
They kind of relented to gave in to Obi-Wan's and Qui-Gon's dying wishes that he be trained, and the whole chosen one thing, and we step into here with two as one, literally the same person, May and
split.
Osha,
Yeah,
and Sol makes his decision to protect. I mean, he basically says, I mean, this is the attachment thing. That's another great little detail. He's about to say, "I love you," bit like Shmi never gets the words out to Anakin. He's going to say it to Osha. She doesn't let him. She force chokes him and kills him. So, which was a mega. I mean, it took longer than I thought. It was a powerful scene. So all of these things, Sol's decision to compared to Vernestra's decision at the end to make him the patsy, basically, we had a rogue Jedi. He was that one bad apple, and all of this is on him. And you sit there thinking, I need a season two because we know it's not all just him.
yeah.
There's stuff happening, and I thought the parallel of those two was really clever.
Can I just say, in December, I had David Harewood in my suite. We were working on a couple of Charles Dickens shows for Sky Arts,
Wow. Yeah.
and yeah, I mean it's yeah, it's the first time he's ever been in a grade, which was cool. So that was
Yeah.
kind of cool because he was very kind of excited to see what we're doing. Star Wars did kind of come up, but he did not mention King Thing. Like, I mean, I can't even remember the conversation, but obviously
Wow.
it wasn't about the Acolyte. But
No. No.
normally what happens is it's normally either because like there's so much Star Wars in my life, and that people, a lot of clients kind of catch wind of it, so we end up
Yeah.
talking about it with some description, normally with costume inside. But he didn't mention it, and I was just like, so when I sat there, I was
Yeah.
that meme again. I was like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You were Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at
yeah,
the screen.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we should, but that's cool, and it was. I mean, it's good to see, yeah, good to see him in back. But also, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like we said, it's the start of this extra interference by the Senate and that of
Yeah.
the oversight
Yeah.
committees into the Jedi, and
Yeah.
really starting to look into it because he raises some valid points, really, and we've said this, and it's what it's been brought up in this whole series. Really, is about you know why the Jedi, with their kind of pseudo religious kind of
Yeah.
doctrine, to basically make the decisions for beings, because they take children away from the families, and also the
Yeah.
families who are left behind.
Yeah.
So it's it's
You weirdly you saw that very well. Sorry to step in. You saw that very well in season two of Star Wars Visions, where most of the
yeah,
characters, most of the episodes was somebody, a Padawan being chosen, and the people who were left behind, and
yeah,
and some trying like Shmi tried to be happy for Anakin. She was heartbroken, but she tried to be happy. And
yeah,
some of the characters in Visions tried to be happy, and some were like, "Oh, well, I'd better get back to digging dirt then." What that they're off on their destiny, and we're just left behind. So yeah, that
yeah.
that that definitely popped up as well.
And that's it, isn't it? Like, you know not many people even think about it, dwell on it. That's the whole
No,
point. It's just like, it's always, you always focus on the one who's gone on adventures and not the ones who are left
yeah.
behind. So,
Well,
which,
it's like all Luke's friends, isn't it? All those kids at Toshi Station are probably still at Toshi. Well, we know they are because we see them
yeah,
in Mando, don't we? We see Cammy and Fixer and
fixer.
that just
Yeah.
sitting there, same life. Nothing's changed for them. The Death Star blew up, yeah, and made no difference to me.
Yeah, well, that's because it was Anakin who blew it up, not Luke. So
Thanks, Charlie.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think there's enough. There's more than enough. I mean, there's way more than enough meat on the bone to want to
yeah,
move forward. I mean, Plagueis appearance notwithstanding, which was a great little. I will just call that an Easter egg at the moment because
that is,
you know
yeah, yeah,
it's nothing more than that. He's there like Yoda at the end.
yeah,
It's like Leia turning up at the end of Rogue One. It was like, oh cool, it was Yoda. We've been waiting all season for it. Like, we're going to see him. We were going to see him. Be kind of cool to see the High
yeah,
Council, and then she walks in, and there's the back of his head. So that was very cool. But there's enough questions, definitely, off the back of this, to want to take it forward. One moment that really I was like on the not on the edge of my seat, but like sitting right forward, going, "Wow,
Mm.
we've heard of this, but we've never seen it." Somebody falling into the dark side so strongly they corrupt a kyber crystal.
Yeah,
That blade going from blue to red. Even Khmer was taken aback. Even he was like, "Oh,
yeah.
I really did pick the wrong sister here, didn't I?" That moment for me was peak Star Wars.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the way it was done as well was like, was
Yeah.
really, really well kind of presented, and
Mm.
how like the when she switched from the blade, it didn't just suddenly go red. It kind of like, it struggled to get to red and then, wiped out, extinguished the light, which is a really nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, that was something that, like you said, she wasn't like when we've seen Vader do it, he was intentionally doing it. She was just like the pure pent up rage, really.
Yeah.
The fact that
Absolutely. Yeah.
Saul had lied to her, kept things from her, and again, it's just like it all comes down to like breakdown in communications. It's like relationship 101. You hold,
Yeah.
you keep stuff from people, you know, even with the best intentions.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
it
it's multi-layered though. In a great way, it was multi-layered because there were certain things that maybe later he could have said to her, but she left.
yeah,
She didn't see it through, so she left. So and there was that regret you picked up on earlier in the season. The affection was very clear,
yeah,
that Sol felt. There was a moment earlier on, and I forget which episode. It might actually have been in Choice, where Indara says to Sol about, you haven't got a Padawan.
yeah,
You haven't got a Padawan, and then this situation comes along, and it's almost like emotionally, he's like, "You're my Padawan kid. You're the one." And so he puts all his invests all his emotions into that. And you think sliding doors in another time, maybe not then, but in another time, he could have very easily put his helmet on, and that could have turned him.
yeah,
His emotions were just at the brim. And again, it goes back to the David Harewood. I'll get the character's name to his little speech with Vanessa, because as we were watching it, we were like, I just get a sense that there's something going on with her. Something's not
mm,
right with her. And I think it was just that she was just a very placid, emotionless. She's not human. She's an alien. So she's not exhibiting the same emotions that you'd expect from a human character. She's very got it under a lid. And she wasn't the bad guy, and she senses Khmer. And correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't it been established that he was her Padawan at one point?
yeah. In this in episode 8, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
If not before, definitely it was like, because we had that recognition, like we said at the beginning of episode 4 night,
yeah,
where Soul recognizes,
yes,
and I raised a question: was that because we saw him in episode 2, or is it because there's some connection further back?
yeah, yeah.
But it makes sense now. So, and again, I mean, cut to season 2, flashback episode. Why did he leave with and Vanessa? Yeah,
It's all there to be done, isn't it? It's all
yeah.
there to be done. It really is. Another thing, you say this often, and we don't make enough fuss of it. The music for this was fantastic. The
Yeah.
closing music over the credits at the end was just
Oh, yeah.
wonderful. Picture
I
disc
assume we're
good.
talking
Yeah,
about episode 8 as opposed
we
to,
are. Yeah,
yeah.
we are.
I
Yeah.
mean, what did you think of the track for episode 7?
I didn't mind it at all. I really didn't mind it. I mean, quite apart from the fact that here we go in outside Star Wars news, I've just located and found the crew coin for Willow, so I've got that on its way.
Cool.
But quite apart from that, I liked it in Willow because I'm not invested in Willow to vaguely the level that I am in Star Wars, but I thought,
Uh,
that's kind of different. It's kind of cool. I don't mind it. And there's been other shows that have come out since Willow, like Renegade Nell and this is Lady Jane thing that's like they're just kind of funking around with history a little bit and just making it a bit snappy. It's like that's kind of fun. I don't mind that at all. I didn't mind it. I know a lot of people didn't like it. It wasn't like the opening music to the first 3 seasons of Enterprise with Russell Watson singing "Faith in the Heart," whatever it was, which was like,
No.
yeah, exactly, great song, but it's a long road.
Yeah.
I don't need that every week, but just as like a one-off that was very lyrically as well, very
Very
specific to what
specific.
was
Yeah.
going on. I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. I
Yeah.
was fine with that.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, look at look at what we had in Andor. We had kind of like a bit of more kind of like had like heavy metal type drumming and
Oh
rock
yeah,
drumming and stuff like that.
and that
And
was fine.
I
You had
mean,
it in Attack of the Clones. Don't forget, the Coruscant scenes. You had loads of
yeah,
electric
exactly.
guitar going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I just, I mean, you
Yeah,
just kind of go, okay, I
yeah.
mean, there's a reason for it. You don't just randomly go, I know, I'm just going to stick a little bit of Taylor Swift in it just for the sake of it. There's a reason for selection of track, and like you said, the lyrics are
Yeah,
specifically written. There must have been,
yeah.
so it wasn't really a big deal, and so
No,
therefore we
not at
don't
all.
need to spend any more time talking about it on this episode. So,
Agreed. It
but
was. We
yes,
were fine with it. That's it. We
but
were
the
fine.
music throughout the season
Yeah,
has been, I think, one of the highlights that has kind of gone slightly unnoticed. So I'm hoping that
yeah,
it gets the plaudits out of the awards and stuff. I hope they put it
yeah.
forward for consideration for every single award because
I
it's
I think the music across the
yeah.
board, really, for Star Wars has been very good in recent times. I said to you before we started recording, I've just finished watching Ahsoka again, and Kevin
Yeah.
Kiner and his team just smashed it with that. Absolutely smashed it with that. And all of them have been good. Obviously, Mando won Emmys and Grammys, I think, as well. Fantastic. So the music has been brilliant, really, through since Rebels. It's been fantastic all the way. So there's not anything that stands out as being subpar or overly derivative.
No.
I do sometimes think that I know these things need to stand on their own. You look at the Marvel series and they're all Marvel, but they're all
Yeah.
very different. There's a sheen of quality across the Marvel productions in terms of how they're made that's consistent.
Yeah.
I believe anyway. But thematically, stylistically, design wise, music, performances, everything else is very different. But you could pick any character and throw them into a room together and make a Marvel movie, and it'd work. That's the beauty of the MCU. With Star Wars, I do sometimes wish and I'll never stop harping on about this. I still wish they had the Fox intro. I really do. I know people say it's pathetic and it's nitpicky, but Star Wars not starting with that just doesn't
I mean,
not sit right. That's not the right word. Just doesn't sound right. That's the word
yeah.
to me.
I mean, I was thinking. Funny enough, I was thinking this whilst I was sat having to endure the what I call the revolving helmets. And it's like, that was clearly some exec, probably at Disney's idea to kind of like do basically what Marvel's done.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it doesn't need it because really a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away is all you freaking need,
Honestly,
really.
that's all you need.
Yeah. And I
Completely
mean, the
agree. Yeah.
fanfare, absolutely, the Fox
Yeah.
fanfare, I
Yeah.
get that, especially for the films. But
Yeah.
yeah, for the show, it's just like, it drags on, and I don't think you need it. It's not like, but then there might be a whole generation of people you forget, like, there's
Yeah.
there's a whole generation of people who are probably brought up watching Star
Yeah.
Wars and Disney Plus who would be like, oh my god, if the helmet thing didn't happen, they'd be like, where's the helmet?
Yeah. Totally. It's purely my
Yeah,
my personal
grumpy old man,
preference.
generational one,
I
like
guess. Yeah. I
nostalgia. Yeah,
guess. I've just rewatched all 9 films in
yeah,
the last few weeks as well, and just again, just having the Fox thing at the beginning, just this is
yeah.
how this is my little kick. So it's a personal preference. It's of no relevance. I'm sure there'd be focus groups would have looked at that and yawned just like you are.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's I mean, I think we're still really, I think, going to kind of, it's going to take a bit of time to kind of get our heads around exactly what all this kind of means, and that, the whole,
Yeah.
like, the relationship between May and Osha, and that hasn't fully been explored in the past and the present. I feel that the whole conversation about what a virgins is, and it
Yeah.
kind of comes back to that one point that again happened in the Phantom Menace council, where Mace Windu says a virgin's around a
Yeah.
living thing, which suggests that with Anakin, obviously that was rare in itself, but like,
Yes.
generally it seems to be a more of a
A place.
natural, yeah, a
Yeah.
place, or like a chasm or whatever. But I also
Or a
like
dark
how,
cave.
yeah, a
Yeah.
dark cave, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like how Indara kind of mentions, oh, this planet was kind of basically written off after like a hyperspace disaster, which is what
Yeah.
happened at the beginning of the first book
Our
of the High
Republic.
Republic.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
like, that's a little kind of thing that most people won't get, and I'm sure there'll be some people like, oh, but didn't that happen Legend or something. But like, no, it's yeah. So there's these little things, and I think that in itself starts to then kind of go, well, actually, not only is this leading into the prequels, but like I said, we're leapfrogging the OT, and we're going into sequel trilogy territory
Yeah,
with Palpatine, and the dyad is
yeah,
Ben and Ray. So
yeah.
it's like, we've got 4D Star Wars storytelling going right there. You
I
know,
love that. I love that.
there you
But
go.
don't you? I love the thought of that though. You say that, and you're right because the Exegol thing is a through line because Project Necromancer is a through line, and it's
Yeah,
picking up on different series as you go. And so, whilst the sequel trilogy will probably always be hit with the stick of they were kind of just making this up as they went along, which is what people say of the OT, but there was nothing to compare the OT to. So George could literally make it up as he went along. It didn't matter. There was
exactly.
nothing to compare it to apart from the notes he may have made in 73, so which aren't relevant. So, but now as they seed these things and lay these things down, it's like, oh wow. And you made a point about me being, I don't think I am, but being a bit grumpy old man about the Fox intro. It's just my preference. How kids will come into Star Wars in the last 10 years and that will mean nothing to them, literally nothing to them.
Mm.
It's like, oh, what we got that on? That's what they put on the X-Men films.
Skip
Why is that on
intro,
Star
skip
Wars?
intro. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That they'll come in and all of these things that we're seeing now that are getting woven into the fabric of the storytelling. And after a point, it doesn't really matter whether it came in a book or a comic or a TV show or a film or a computer game. It's in there. The relevance of where it came from doesn't matter. The fact that it's part of the storyline does. So their perception and view of, let's say, Exegol to the Rise of Skywalker, and by the time we fill that gap in, we'll have hopefully had the Ray film, which will tell you even more. It all just keeps expanding out. So again, I think that's a very good thing.
yeah. No, I think so. I mean, what it does, however, is that it makes it slightly exhausting to watch it. On one level, to try and start, you're going to end up having to get your Venn diagrams out and your boards with your string and
Yeah,
that to try and work it all out, which is on one level is really, really fantastic. But you have to be careful because actually, again, how does that then bring in new viewers into this
yeah,
franchise if suddenly you've got something that kind of unravels? But again, I think as they add these things into the series, and I think as they add them, we can kind of discover them, and then it becomes a thing. But you know, we're still, these are just little breadcrumbs. There's not been one
yeah,
kind of pivotal moment yet, I don't think, where we've kind of gone, oh my god, that's it. Because and they're very clever because as soon as they start making and joining the dots up a little bit too much, we're going to end up back in Legends territory where there's no room to maneuver,
yeah.
which is like, why we need some of these kind of bigger gaps in the timeline to leave it to breathe and let other things kind of happen and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
it just felt like their only opportunity to have free blue sky storytelling is to go way back. We
oh
go
yeah,
right back to the Mangold era, and then
yeah,
once you've got the Mangold project, whatever that ends up being, you've then got 20 plus thousand years until you get anywhere near where we are now. So then you could argue, yeah, give so and so a trilogy, set it there. Give so and so a series, set it there, and just fill in all the gaps. And they're all in familiar, well, not all, but a lot of familiar locations in their earlier times. Maybe
mm,
you'll see Tatooine when it was green and verdant. It's supposed to have been, wasn't it? Oh no, this is Legends. Wasn't it in Legends that it had only been a desert planet for a few centuries that had some sort of ecological issues and it just dried it all out? There's
yeah,
something like that. It was something like that. So
yeah.
you've got all these things that you can go to see. Imagine seeing Coruscant when you can still see the mountain, not just the top.
Oh, yeah,
So there's some great potential storytelling.
absolutely. Time is a wonderful thing, I think, so
Mhm.
but we are probably running slightly out of time on this little condensed, very fast reaction chat for the final two episodes of Acolyte. But I think, so what's your takeaway from this series so far then? And as a Star Wars fan, but also maybe as like, if you were to say to somebody, watch the Acolyte
Yeah.
because what would it be?
My takeaway, there's a lot of surface things. I think the design has been fantastic. I think the performances have been good. I take your point about the script, but I think Star Wars has always had a bit of wood and cheese in its script. So
Yeah.
yeah, if it suddenly became over, Andor's the only show that's got away with being a more thoughtful adult show. I don't think that tone would work for this show.
No,
So
absolutely
being
not.
a bit more pulpy, it kind of worked. A bit snappier, it worked. A lot of heart in this show. A lot of interesting characters. You mentioned the Padawans, Jackie and Yord especially. I think they were great. So, and they're missed already. So I think more of that kind of stuff is definitely welcome. My takeaway, I'm glad it happened. That's probably my takeaway is I'm glad I saw this. I do. You've talked about it in the show for years about, where was the moment when it all went wrong? And then you're going down the hill to Phantom Menace, the tipping point. This is the tipping point. You can see it. That now, Venestra, for example, who's a senior Jedi, she's got the ear of Yoda, let's put it that way. She's covering up something terrible that happened. She's trying to cover the truth. She's not being honest. Now the Jedi are starting to lie to the politicians. You get to the sequel trilogy, and you could argue that they're the puppets of the politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on that path to them losing their autonomy, which actually, given the events of this and past things, as you say, about taking children, having the right to do it, which is mentioned more than once, maybe isn't a bad thing. Who watches the Watchmen kind of logic. So,
Exactly.
but ultimately they become a pawn of the Sith. So this is the start of the Sith just turning the positions and
Yeah.
so in a very different way. But it's, I think, for that, and there's so much more to learn. Just for that, it's worth it for me. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right. I definitely don't think I could say to anybody that was 4.5 hours of wasted, I've wasted out, I'm never going to get back. I think it's been enjoyable to watch, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, to kind of circle back to my point about like the script and that is, I think what it was is like sometimes it seemed like they relied on these kind of slight callbacks to like Return of the Jedi, which I think at that point in time, it almost actually did pull me out of it because it's like it was a little bit on the nose. She threw the
Yeah.
lightsaber away. And I just think it's just like, you could have been a little bit more clever with that. And also like when Osha's choking Soul, Matt, there's just like she's doing it, and it's just like she's kind of blank. There's no, you can't read where, is she doing it intentionally? Is it like, she's angry about, maybe that's just my first initial
Yeah.
thought. And when I review it again in another episode, another week's time or something, I might change. But I think it's yeah, I think the lore, for lack of a better term, the Star Wars lore is going to be better for the Acolyte
Yes.
than
Yeah.
without it. And it does make you start to wonder, like, when we finish, say, like phase 3 of the High Republic and that, and we still read about Venestra and that in the upcoming adventures, you kind of go, when is it? When happened? What happened? And all these kind of things, and just makes you start to kind of look at some other things maybe in different lights, because it is, it's been a tragic story on one hand. You've basically kind of had the hapless Jedi, Jedi who's not been able to get a Padawan, so desperately wants one, and really just cocks it up from the beginning. And then you've got somebody who's having to cover for him, and it's that lie that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and to a point where it's probably going to engulf and swallow them all. Which
Yeah.
maybe might be the master stroke of the whole thing. And actually, we find out that it leads directly into the rise of the Empire and Revenge of the Sith. There you go. So, as Mark nods rather thoughtfully, we're going to leave it there for now, but we're going to come back and we're going to have a wash up kind of final episode on the Acolyte. Might bring a special guest in or two just to talk about it, just kind of like get our thoughts, next week once we've had a bit of time to fully digest and cogitate on it and everything else and
Good
ruminate.
word.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's Master Chef for you.
Love it.
So yeah, so for now,
Marinate. Yes, that's good.
yeah.
Word.
So for now, anyway, that's all we've got time for. But thank you very much for viewing or listening. And yes, remember to send in your listeners' questions. Very important for making tracks, because we will be back very soon with another episode of that. And until then, thank you very much. Stay safe. Take care. May the force be with you.